Welcome to Adeline Redesign. This is part 7 in a series of assembly line style furniture refinishing. You don't need to have seen the previous 6 in order to appreciate this one. In this episode, there will be 4 nightstands. I will be painting 2 that are black and 2 that have white bases but have a faux finish top. The last episode went over that top. It looks kind of stucco, something of a Pottery Barn dupe. These black nightstands are pretty simple. They're just straightforward black. I've been using Rust-Oleum door and trim for both the black and the white, and for the black, that will be the only thing I use. For the white, there have been a couple of other things that have come into play. The finish that I was using or getting with the HVLP sprayer was a problem, and so I switched to the roller until I could get the nerve to go back to the sprayer and try again, because I felt quite sure that the problem was really me and not the sprayer, and so I needed time to think on how I could fix myself. During that time, I am using a roller on these nightstands. I spray painted the handles of a number of them. The handles came as silver. There was one pair that I spray painted gold and another pair that I had spray painted in rose gold. I like the rose gold and the gold better than the silver on every single option that's available. This is in my living room where I've recently hung new photos. I see in the video that they are not hung up, but that was me staging them so that I could see whether or not I wanted them, and I decided that I did. The nightstands in black are absolutely my favorite. This pair has some issues on the top. There had been early on in the journey a kind of primer and paint test that I had done. I did different amounts of primer, different kinds of primer over all of the 8 side tables that I was trying to work on simultaneously, and then gave them all a week before I came back to test. In coming back to test them, there was one that really failed the test to enough of an extent that I believed I needed to remove the paint from the top. I got about halfway through that paint removal on the top before I realized that it was unnecessary. It adhered well enough, I just needed to paint over it. And I unfortunately did not sand that down to be smooth enough. And so while you can't see it on video, it's impossible for me to pick up on camera. One of these black nightstands has imperfections on the top that are painful for me to look at. Most especially because these were my favorite, and so that minor imperfection that's hard to see on camera, hard to see in person, gnaws at me. The next pair that I'll be doing that's in black will be the last pair that needs to be refinished. So at the beginning of this, trying to do everything in bulk, I had 8 nightstands and would end up with 4 pairs of nightstands at the end. All 8 of those are identical. I was able to clean them all at the same time. I was able to do a lot of repair to them all near the same time, and also I was then able to do a faux finish concrete overlay on 4 of them that had had water damage, not simultaneously, but kind of back to back. It was at that point where the best thing for me to do for everyone's sake, including my own psychological sake, was to drop down to 2 at a time so that I would be working only on the pairs that would be matched to each other rather than working on all 8 at one time. I am now switching to the black. This is also the, or not switching the black, I'm still on the black. This is still Rust-Oleum's door and trim. It's important to go in and use a damp cloth to remove any dust, especially if it's been a little while since you've painted. And I'm in an environment that no matter how hard I try, there's going to be dust in it. This is done in the garage, and I do avoid doing any sanding in my garage. Not that I always manage to avoid it, but there's still dust in the air and it can get into your finish. So wiping it back is important. Sanding it off is also important. I had gone to a roller rather than using a spray on these pieces, not because I prefer the look of a roller, though I do think it is good. I think it's second best to a really good spray on finish would be a roller. In my opinion, I think there are kind of styles where that wouldn't be as true. The distressed look, kind of the shabby chic, is a great example of that. But for something sleek like fairly modern black nightstands, I think that the spray finish is the most beautiful, and then the roller finish is also pretty pleasing to the eye. The issues that I was having with the paint, I believe I discovered had been a viscosity issue. I didn't use the viscosity cup, having assumed that I knew best and that I had the paint thinned exactly as much as it should have been. And admittedly, I believed that I had it a little thicker than it should have been. But when you add water to paint, you're reducing its durability. So, in an effort to maintain its durability, I didn't add enough water when I had first used the sprayer on these pieces. The result was that the sprayer kind of spat out, it got stuck, the finish looked orange peely, it just was across the board not good. So, when I had some time to calm down and think about where were there issues that I could have been the cause of, how do I fix that, it really boiled down to something pretty simple. And it seemed to be that just the viscosity of the paint was not where it should have been. And that's on me. So the paint sprayer is not at fault for that. Please don't blame the paint sprayer. The roller works well, but I can only use it for one coat. And that's if I'm doing two at a time, that's okay. So I have use of it for about an hour. After that hour, this paint, I don't know if the paint is the issue or if the roller is the issue or if this is just something that's going to happen with foam rollers. After about an hour, the little pieces of the roller start coming off into the paint finish, which was very disappointing with the white nightstands because they had such a near flawless finish until I tried to reuse the roller after it had been more than an hour since its first coat. Having decided that the backs would look better in black, I took off the sticker from the back and am doing painting on the backs of these two sides. This will be the last time this roller is going to be used on the piece of furniture because the back is not a finished piece, but it does look better overall. And when I get back to using the sprayer more regularly, I'll definitely be painting all of it. I'm using a 220 grit here to kick back the little pieces that may get stuck in it because it's dust, and also to make sure this is a smooth sanded surface so that the next roll or next coat of paint is going to go on very smoothly and it should look near flawless, which it will. I'm very happy to be able to say that these nightstands look pretty near flawless, despite not being a sprayed on finish, being rolled on and hand painted where necessary. They still look really gorgeous. And the high density foam roller, despite its negative aspects, I think is a really great idea if you want a good finish on a piece of furniture. Anybody who wants to fight me on that is welcome to comment to explain why uh, a roller with thicker nap would be a better idea. Getting into the grooves of this required that I use a paintbrush. There wasn't a way around needing to do that. But cutting in with the paintbrush and then going back with the roller on any given section was cathartic in a lot of ways. It felt good to see it come together and see how my vision was really starting to be formed into something that I could be particularly proud of. I like making these videos. If you would like to click like, that would be like really like cool. And I'm pretty new to making them, so a lot of what I'm doing is entirely new territory for me. I've been doing this for a few months at this point with some kind of seriousness, and learning how to edit is one thing. Learning search engine optimization, tags to use, to figure out who my hopeful one day contemporaries are, the accounting aspects of it, in addition to learning so many new skills while planning projects, is a lot to take on all at once, and it's a challenge that I'm happy to be able to take on. I'm now adding the gold handles back to this black, and I will be finishing the tops of these pieces in a deft clear wood finish. Now, click like it said. 220 grit is coming up, and I'm going to do that on the handles that I'll be painting with spray paint to help make sure they adhere. These handles are going to be a rose gold that will go onto the white nightstands. I believe it was kind of hard for me to tell exactly what color. You see how beautiful the sheen is. It's perfect. It's perfect. It was so worth a fairly big hassle to be able to present these for sale and know that they're really worth something. They've gotten a lot of views so far, and I priced them high enough that maybe it'll take a while before I get a buyer, and maybe I'll need to go down in price. But as it stands, they're getting a lot of attention, even if they haven't been purchased yet, which they haven't been. Covering the paint can with a towel of some sort before using the mallet to close it has helped prevent a lot of splashing of paint, which has been an issue for me on repeat, because pouring it out of the can into whatever the next container is appears not to be something that's a strong suit of mine. Going back here, I'm doing another coat on the white nightstands. While these white nightstands took a number of coats, I believe the total was 5. I may misremember that. The next pair of nightstands where the body is white and I have that stucco Pottery Barn dupe top coat, or not top coat, but faux finish on top, those don't require 5 total coats, and the reason is because I did a secondary coat of primer. The primer test that I'd done before didn't have enough statistical value, I think, for even me to be sure what I learned, because I was kind of winging it without taking appropriate notes, and I didn't thoroughly test the results. But what I had learned is that shellac bend primer, not learned, but had reinforced for me, is that shellac bend primer is really just a great go-to primer for the kind of work that I want to do, whether there's going to be bleed through or not, whether I have laminate or not. Bin shellac based primer is just a great product to use, and I am going to continue to make use of bin shellac primer and also just shellac in general. Going back to the nightstands that have the white bodies and the stucco tops, I'm taping off the top here because the white bodies that you're seeing underneath, that's just the primer. I haven't actually applied paint yet, so I need to cover the tops to avoid overspray on that, and then I'm going to break out the Rust-Oleum paint and door trim, that uh, paint that I had been using before. It had been in this container for long enough that I decided it needed to be restrained in case any of it had coagulated. I had taken it out to do a couple touch-ups repeatedly, so there could have been little bits and pieces that I just don't want in my spray gun, which I'm assembling here now. This spray gun is a HVLP. It's fairly popular. It's about 60 bucks. The wiping down to ensure that I don't have dust on anything, that's an important step. So is sanding, doing a light sanding with a fine grit to make sure that I have a smooth surface matters. I'm going to be adding the paint now back into the bag that goes in the paint sprayer before I put Bare Ultra Scuff Defense in as well. This is also a white paint, and it's not the white paint that I'm using, but it costs $2. You see that? $2. $2. It's a good quality paint. The reason that it costs $2 is it's in the mismix section. So somebody had ordered it and either didn't like the color matching or they didn't come pick it up after they had placed the order. They mark those things down. You can find them in the mismix section. Having strained the paint from the Rust-Oleum door and trim paint and then adding the Bare Ultra Scuff Defense, I'll be able to go back to my pieces of furniture and put a nice layer of paint on it. This time I was careful about making sure that I checked the viscosity using a viscosity cup. It varies how long you want it to take for the viscosity cup to empty, but 20 seconds to 60 seconds is kind of the standard in most circumstances. Check your specific sprayer if you get one. This is what step I did not do appropriately when I was having finishing issues before, where my gun was spitting out just kind of clumps of paint. And the reason was that I didn't have the paint thinned well enough. I hadn't used the viscosity cup. I thought I could eyeball it, and I could not. Now I'll go and do a coat of paint on these two pieces. The way it looks immediately on the cardboard practice piece, I can tell that this is going to be a far better finish than what I'd been doing before. And the fix was simple enough, and it just meant that I can't be confident in my ability to determine the viscosity of the paint yet. Perhaps one day I'll be able to, but at this point I still need to rely on the viscosity cup, which I hadn't been doing for a while, and I believe it has contributed to the majority of my issues. The paint sprayer is not the problem. I am the problem. But the paint sprayer is a fantastic solution when you get it right. How quickly it goes by is amazing. It's a big setup and it's a big breakdown, it's a big cleanup at the end. But I can do these two nightstands, I can paint with the sprayer in 10 minutes perhaps, where it would take me an hour to do it with a roller and a brush. That it takes an hour to do setup and painting and cleanup for the spray gun, but provides such a high quality finish, I think is really worth it. And I need to convince myself to stick to trying to learn that. I hope you stick with me.